Welcome to the Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and you're listening to a weekly podcast about books and life. Not necessarily in that order. You can subscribe to the Virtual Memories Show on iTunes, or use our RSS feed with your favorite podcatcher. You can find the RSS feed on our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/vm. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, and SoundCloud at VMSPod, on Facebook at facebook.com/virtualmemoriesshow, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube by searching for Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please go to the iTunes store, look up the Virtual Memories Show, and leave a rating and review for us. You can support the Virtual Memories Show and get access to exclusive content with a recurring monthly donation via Patreon. Just visit patreon.com/VMSPod and set up your level of support. Every week you'll get new material from our patron-only blog, and you'll also get to listen to my quarterly bonus podcast, Fear of a Square Planet, which features extra material from our guests and is only available to supporters of the show. So visit patreon.com/VMSPod or paypal.me/VMSPod and help me continue to produce smart conversation about books, art, comics, and culture every week at the Virtual Memories Show. All right, I'm posting this one a little bit early. I am off to Frankfurt for business and then London to record some podcasts. And when I say I'm off, I mean 3 hours from now. So I want to get this one done, get the web page posted, etc. And you guys get to benefit from that, and you get to wait for next week. So this week's show is with the great illustrator Barry Blitt. Barry's work has been adorning New Yorker magazine covers for like 25 years, and nowadays, he's seemingly their go-to guy for Trump-related covers, which is a mixed blessing, of course. If you don't know him by name, his work is instantly recognizable in this scratchy style, these really subtle watercolors. If you don't know him, just look up Blitt with 2 T's, B-L-I-T-T, and you'll say, oh, that guy. Oh, wait. Okay, now this week, that is late October 2017, if you're listening to this when the episode comes out, Riverhead is publishing Blitt, a collection of Barry's illustrations for The New Yorker, The New York Times, Vanity Fair, and more. I got to see a copy when Barry and I recorded a while back, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I'm just so thrilled that this book's going to exist, and he's not, which you'll find out soon. The book's also got essays from some of his pals, along with work-in-process sketches, rejections, and all sorts of, I want to say ephemera, but the behind-the-scenes stuff. It's really a beautiful collection, and I pre-ordered a copy. Sadly, I won't be here when it arrives, but, I'll have that to look forward to when I get home. Now, the thing I do want to caveat about this episode, and I just alluded to it, I've interviewed a few major illustrators this year, like John Cuneo and Joe Ciardello. They were both pretty neurotic. I've met a few other illustrators through them who are also pretty neurotic. Barry is more neurotic than all of them put together, it seems. So that makes this episode a little rough in a Curb Your Enthusiasm kind of way. But I swear to God, we got along fine. Barry and I, we talked for an hour and had lunch before recording. We shot The Breeze afterwards, along with his wife, Angie, for like 2 hours. Great conversation, really good time. I put some microphones down and things got really difficult. So, it's to be expected, I guess. I do have my theories about illustrators being more neurotic than cartoonists because people actually see their work, but Barry blows up that one the way he blew up a couple of my other conversational feints this episode. Anyway, it's still entertaining. You'll learn a bunch about Barry Blitt this time around, even if he did try to sync the episode. Here's Barry's self-deprecating bio. There are more comprehensive ones at his publisher's site and Amazon, etc., but here's what he posted at barryblitt.com. Barry Blitt was born in Montreal, schooled in Toronto, and burnished to a gleaming shine in London, New York, and Connecticut. He has been contributing fussy little drawings to countless publications for what seems like years. His hobbies include visiting the shops and keeping friends and loved ones at arm's length. He's not joking. His new book is Blitt from Riverhead Books. And now, the Virtual Memories conversation with Barry Blitt. How harrowing was it for you, looking back at decades of your work for selection for something like this?
It's harrowing looking at working on anything, looking at something I did this week. Mm-hmm. But I think the cliche, the true cliche is that you look back and you see things you thought you liked and they're horrible, and you see things that you thought were terrible and they're not as bad as you thought.
Yeah, did you have dramatic ones like that you, my God, wow, that really came off better than I thought it did?
I can't remember. My memory isn't as elastic as it was. I know that getting the whole book delivered to me was horrific. I couldn't look at it. I flipped through it and said, oh my God, all I could see was the bad stuff in it.
Are illustrators more neurotic than other artists? Because you're now the third one really I'm sitting with besides John Cuneo and Joe Ciardello, and they're both pretty neurotic in their way. And I'm finding they're more neurotic than cartoonists are. Huh. And I've developed a theory it's because people actually see your work. And with cartoonists, there might be a pretty small audience, where you guys actually have an audience that's...
Well, I think you've picked like three of the most particularly neurotic illustrators to...
Okay, so it's a self-selecting
to reference
group.
Here.
That's who ends up with me. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. But I could suggest you go see Ross McDonald or Mark Ulrichsen. They're almost totally unneurotic, as far as I know. Mm-hmm. So, bang goes that theory.
Does it fuel your work at all, the neurosis?
I think it probably does.
How so?
You mean you want me to actually explain it?
Well,
I think it's a coping mechanism. Listen to that. There's activity out there. Should we wait for that to pass, or are you gonna remove that? You want to ask the question again?
Well, he seems to be parking right here, so we can just be revving away.
There is an old guy who lives next door who fixes everybody's everything, and he's got a real noisy...
My next door neighbor was a Baptist family.
Oh, yeah. Say no more.
Well, they tried to save our souls. The mother did when I was young by giving me Jack Chick tracts.
Jack Chick?
Jack Chick. Do you know those?
Nope.
Oh.
I thought you said Jack Shit.
No, Jack Chick. They're these weird little tracts of comics about Satanism and all the other horrible things you're going to do. It's going to leave you condemned to hell unless you give your life over to Jesus. They're great because anytime they showed God, he has no face, which as like a 6-year-old just discovering comics was the awesomest thing in the world. So anyway, my neighbor was trying to fix my soul, but having a neighbor who actually fixes hardware, I guess, is a little...
That would be nice to draw characters without a face. Idel Rodriguez he's also seems quite unneurotic. I'm not sure your theory holds.
Do you gravitate to the neurotic ones? Do you hang out with illustrators in general?
I hang out with Cuneo and Ciardello, Tim Bauer. He's also unneurotic.
Do you have more friends who are artists or non-artists?
I would have to. I'd have to make a chart and work it out. Not that there's that many friends, but it's just...
I was going to say, if you can't answer it right away, it probably means you have a decent balance. If the only people in your life are artists, you probably know that's.
You could be an actuary. That you work that out like that.
Oh, yeah. I develop theories about other people's lives really well.
You should do most of the talking in this interview if you could.
Again, it keeps me from thinking about my own life.
I can't remember which pieces in the book I was surprised at. Mm-hmm. And I won't be able to cite individual illustrations. So,
were you happy to see your work come together like that? To see
happy? What do you mean by that?
I know happy's a weird question for a neurotic, but did it feel like you've achieved something?
In theory, it did. It was nice to be offered the book. It would have been nice to have stopped there, but to actually have to produce it and put things in, choose which pieces to put in. I second guessed everything. Even if I'm just doing a spot illustration, I'm second guessing the colors and every line that I'm drawing. So you can imagine the gnashing of teeth involved in putting this project together.
So you were voting Giant Meteor 2016. You were just hoping the world was going to get annihilated and you wouldn't have to finish the book? Okay.
Not at all.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
No, it was inevitable that it would probably come out. I do often think, though, if there's a nuclear event in New York, if there's a dirty bomb or something, what that would do to my industry.
Yeah, there have been those events, like Society of Illustrator events and things like that, where you realize the concentration of talent in one room, that if you were smart and unscrupulous enough to get rid of them all, that would open up the door for you.
Oh, yeah, that's not what I was thinking. I just meant all the publishers would...
That you're thinking about killing off all of your peers. That would be...
Yeah, that's not an issue.
Okay.
I never think that way.
Good.
I think this is going pretty drearily so far.
No, this is entertaining. For me, this is entertaining.
Good. All right.
I wanted to ask about your New Yorker career in terms of, it's about 25 years now. You've been a contributor and a cover artist.
Yes, since 94. So what is that, like?
23. Okay. I'm good with math.
Apparently.
Yeah. Again, the actuary thing. So, how's it changed? How's the work you've done there? How has the New Yorker changed as you've worked there? And how's the process of working out covers, especially as we've transitioned into the internet era and the world's gotten into this heavy, fast-paced news thing?
Well, I mean, they've started, I guess, I don't know how long it's been that I've been doing topical stuff for them, but obviously it's changed for me since then, that I'm hyper aware when there's something going on that I could get a cover out of that, or I should be mining what's going on for ideas. So I'm filling sketchbooks with that. Whereas at the beginning, I would take walks through New York and say, oh, hot dog vendors, I'm sure there's something I could do with that. And I think I've still tried to sell them, those kind of ideas, but they're not looking for that stuff from me.
Is there a Blitt angle as far as they're concerned, as to what they'd be expecting from you in terms of...
Yeah, they're expecting something to do with Trump.
Well, nowadays, yeah.
But pop culture stuff or political stuff, topical stuff, basically. That seems to be what...
And how much of that is you?
How much of that is me? How do you mean?
Are those your key areas of interest, or is it more that this is just what I'm good at drawing, and this is what I'm good at catching the zeitgeist of?
I wouldn't say I'm good at either of those things.
I think you're good at them, so we'll agree to disagree.
But that's sort of the way it's happened. It absolutely wasn't by design. I'm not really a political person, and really don't know anything about politics. I can make a joke about somebody. If that person's in politics, then that's wound up on the cover.
And I guess that's what I'm wondering. How much is sort of self-driven? How much is
Yeah, I don't know how it's happened. To be honest with you, I'm just a smart ass, basically.
Yeah.
And I got into the business. I did some likenesses, and I tried to do some funny stuff, but that is obviously. It's come to a place that I feel like Forrest Gump in that, it's sort of, I've been pushed along there, or I've wound up there.
Yeah, see, my entire life has been a combination of imposter syndrome and career by attrition. So those have worked pretty well for me, but I have no talent. So that's sort of how
join the club. Welcome to it.
You're immensely talented. Shut up.
Immensely.
How far back does Smartass go? Were you
Smartass
kid?
A smartass kid, yeah. I mean, I was the smallest kid amongst my peers, the kids I grew up with, and so I had a big mouth. It's amazing that I haven't been beat up, but
I almost took a swing at you over lunch.
Well, the day is young. That would make for great podcast. It would make for great radio.
You suddenly hear this thud, and
exactly.
Son of a...
Yeah.
But again, growing up, you were...
Yeah, I was a smart ass. I mean, I wrote an introductory essay for the book, which forced me to be a little bit introspective, which I am not usually prone to. And what I sort of worked out, I'm not sure how much of it's true, but what I wrote was that when I was younger, my drawings were hero worship. So I would draw hockey players, and I would draw Elton John and Dorothy Hamill. I'm afraid that's what I would draw. An Electric Light Orchestra. I was doing drawings of my heroes. And
mine too, apparently. So.
Good. Yeah. But my being a smart aleck, that didn't enter into the work really. That's what I used to get through life. And I sort of put the two together in art school. You know, I had sort of two styles in art school. One was like a very realistic charcoal pencil style, and the other was a slapdash pen and ink crazy stuff. And when I brought my portfolio around to see magazines, that's all anyone was interested in. Oh, I like the funny stuff. And so, and that's sort of what happened, you know, and it wasn't my choice. I thought the other stuff was really who I was, but apparently not.
Do you work in that style at all?
God, no.
If you keep a separate sketchbook of, you know,
I don't.
You know, the Dorian Gray version. Yeah. How important was your education? I ask only largely because of the conversation with John Cuneo, where he felt that not getting an art school education has been his great limiter in life. I think he's just making excuses for the other limitations. I'm just kidding. But
John is he's one of the best draftsmen that there is. I mean, everyone loves his drawings. So that's a bunch of bullshit. As far as my own education goes, I mean, I went to Ontario College of Art, and I learned more from the other students I think than from the teachers. And that's where I started, just out of desperation, doing, you know, the crazier work. Mm-hmm. But I sort of forgot how we got to this.
Oh, my wondering about your education.
Right.
Could you have become who you became without going to art school?
Oh.
Is another way of framing it.
Probably not. I mean, growing up, my grandfather he manufactured blouses, but his Sunday occupation was he would, you know, copy Norman Rockwell pictures at home, and he would bring me to the art store, and I would, you know, so I thought I would be doing what he was doing, sort of, without the blouses, but I figured I'd be copying stuff, and that's what I did. So yeah, art school that's a very, very long way of telling you that probably art school did help. It opened my eyes. In high school, I refused to take art classes. I was just afraid of all the, all the artsy people. Basically, I found them intimidating, and I was drawing my hockey players, and that was fine. So going to art school was good. That's once again, long answer, short.
Were there other students who went on to? Were there students you knew who went on to good artistic careers, or are you pretty much the main achiever from that cohort?
Oh God, no. There were a lot of people from Ontario College of Art. I mean, Anita Kunz, who's a year older or a grade older.
Trudella mentioned her to me. I hadn't heard of her before that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she's a fantastic artist. She went there. Gary Taxali, a little bit later than me, went to Ontario College of Art. Sandra Dionisi, Paul Dallas, Nina Burks, and lots of terrific illustrators came out of there.
What took you from Canada down to the U.S.?
What took me from Canada down to the U.S. was I was starting to do magazine work in Canada, and I was married to, this is my ex-wife, was an art director at Toronto Life magazine. She got a job at Sports Illustrated, and we moved down in 1989. And that's what brought me down. I was really hoping we would talk about my ex.
Yeah, a lot. So what was she like, and why did the marriage fall? And what was the transition like for you, though, coming to New York, I assume?
Right. I lived on the Upper West Side. It was, I'm intimidated a lot, and I was intimidated by New York City. I couldn't believe I could survive there, and I lived there for a couple of years before moving to Greenwich, Connecticut. But the transition was, work became a bigger part of my life, I think. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd moved away from a lot of friends in Canada. I made friends eventually in New York, but a lot of time was spent bringing my work around, you know, to the New Yorker, to Rolling Stone, to those great American magazines, half of which don't exist anymore. And they certainly don't see people like they used to. You used to be able to bring your portfolio around and see Fred Woodward or see, any number of art directors.
Mm-hmm. And the cultural shift into New York itself, was there a small town vibe? I mean, my Toronto experience is from the last 15 years, where it's sort of a mini New York. It's friendlier, but I don't know what it was like in those years.
Culture wasn't really, that wasn't a big deal for me.
Okay, so metropolitan thing sort of transplanted okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was exciting as hell to just walk around, like I said, with a sketchbook and say, wow, Central Park, that's funny. I'm sure I could do something about that.
The Canadian sense of humor thing. Your brother's a screenwriter, I believe, also with a comic angle. Is there we always hear the Second City guys, Mike Myers, not Second City, but the Mike Myers World, etc.
Martin Short.
Yeah. Something about Canadian transformation of American comedy. Is that anything that you saw in terms of your own work or your own sense of humor as it developed?
You know, as I said, I'm not particularly introspective. I couldn't tell you about me. I mean, there are theories that Canadians are just outside of the culture, so they can look at it as well as participate in it, and that gives a little bit of remove to comment on it. So, I mean, that's possible. But as far as myself goes, I mean, we grew up watching American TV. And Bruce McCall too. I mean, he wrote a book called On Thin Ice, his memoir about growing up in Canada and wanting so badly to work in the United States. And I related to a number of things in that, just like the baseball cards you would buy, you'd get the Canadian version of the American ones, and they would have French in the back. Yeah. But you'd really want the American cards; they were better, and the American chocolate bars were. I mean, there was something romantic about all of that stuff. Exotic.
Yeah. How significant was sports for you? Was it a sports fandom? No, I mean, your drawing, apparently your first published work or your first professionally published work was with an NHL team at 15 years old.
I mean, in my household, in my parents' house, there was no culture that got in the door. There was sports, though. My father's a big sports fan. My brother is still an enormous sports fan and watches I don't know how many different sports. So yes, sports was incredibly important. And I mean, how I used to express myself art-wise, I would draw hockey players or baseball players, and then I would bring the drawings to the hotel where the visiting team stayed when they would be playing in Montreal. And I would meet hockey players and become friends with them, and that's how I got published in the Pittsburgh Penguins yearbook, in the Philadelphia Flyers yearbook. So, I mean, that was my artistic activity at the time.
Did you keep up at all? I mean, do you have any sort of NHL or other sport-related vibe?
Stuff now, you mean?
Yeah, do you care?
I watch hockey.
Yeah,
like a crazy person.
Okay, that's what I'm wondering, if you still have a sports affinity.
Yeah, and I mean, the Pittsburgh Penguins are my team. They've won the Stanley Cup the last couple of years, and it's so nerve-wracking. I don't think it was ever like this for me. I guess I'm getting older, but I mean, I had to leave the room during a game, and a double overtime game this year. I just, my health wouldn't allow it.
Do you have weird jinxes and superstitions?
Yeah, of
about
course.
The team? Okay,
yeah.
I'm assuming, because I had a friend during the Knicks run back in '94. He couldn't watch any of the games because any game he got to see even a minute of, the Knicks lost. And
I've ruined a lot of games for the team.
So you've personally, by wearing the wrong scarf,
I mean, there's an art director, John Korpix, who's a fantastic designer and art director who's worked at a lot of magazines, Esquire, GQ, but he didn't live too far, and I mean, he's moved to Brooklyn since, but whenever he would come over, the Penguins would win. So,
so you had to.
I watched lots of games at his place, and he watched a lot of games here.
Yeah. See, my wife, NFL, she's from Louisiana, so New Orleans Saints were the team, and there was never much of a thought that they were ever going to win. So we never had jinxes and superstitions to worry about. But
do you? I was the Penguins. I mean, the Penguins were the worst team, so I would go and bring my drawings around to.
Yeah, and nobody was bothering them because
right.
I mean,
they brought me on the team bus, and they became friends with me and published my drawings, and they couldn't believe someone knew who they were.
Had you ever tried to reach out to the contemporary era teams, or not? Does it interest you at all to do work for?
Now you mean?
Yeah.
Actually, I made a half-hearted effort a few years ago, but it's not as charming a story when it's like a 50-year-old. I mean, I was 14 or 15 when I was doing that, so. Mm-hmm.
And no weird, hey, I got it. Let's take the guy to the brothel out by the airport. It's not a thing.
No, nothing like that ever happened. No.
Just making sure. Or you wouldn't tell.
I wish.
It would have been an education.
Brothel, yeah. I don't think there were brothels
strip club. I always hear Montreal.
There were what are they called?
Strip clubs.
No.
Well, I was hoping.
I was going to say roadies, but who are the women who hang around? Groupies.
Groupies.
There were groupies. I mean, I remember.
I have a horribly derogatory term for them that I won't, that athletes use that I won't, put on the air, but I'll tell you afterwards.
I'm interested. Good.
But yeah, I guess you'd have that for every sport. That's, have you seen the movie Goon, by the way?
Nope.
Basically, minor league hockey player who's just
a goon.
Can't skate or anything. He has to sort of learn how to do it because all he's good at doing is punching people out. So
that'd be cool.
Yeah, it's kind of a neat movie, comedy, but
I meant to be a goon, but apparently it isn't. The New York Times did that.
Yeah. Too much brain damage? Or,
yeah, too much brain damage. This is still going drearily.
I think this is great.
Okay, good. All right.
So people will say, I never thought Barry Blitt would talk about, all three of them who listen. This will be great. Cuneo, Cardiello, and whoever the third illustrator is going to be. Probably Sorrell, who's going to get mad that I'm wasting your time like this. Looking back over the course of your work for the sake of for the process of the book, what are you better at? When you look at the earlier stuff and say, I'm much better at doing this than I was back then.
Oh, what have I got better at? Oh, I don't know. I look back at older drawings and say, if only I could be that loose. Or
that's what the other question was. Do you feel that you were better in your younger days?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it...
I mean, first of all, there was a class of inks I used to like to use that I can't find anymore. There was paper I used to like. There were nibs that were great. There was certain bread I ate that I can't find anymore.
I bought these pads in Barcelona. It was the only thing I brought back from a business trip in Barcelona. It was a stack of them because they're the only pads I can do these sorts of
I think it's pronounced Barcelona, by the way.
Yes, or never mind. I make a bad joke about that too.
Go ahead.
I understand using the materials, and this is just for scribbling down notes for a podcast, so I can understand when it's actually your livelihood.
I mean, I think I got into the business, and at one point I had it. I had an ambition of making beautiful drawings and making aesthetically pleasing work, and it happened a few times that I would get a last minute deadline, let's say a New Yorker cover, and they liked the idea, and I had 6 hours to draw it, and there was no option of. I mean, it was either, if it was going to turn out looking okay, it was going to be luck. And, it was going to be one shot at it. And so I would do a drawing and it would be very unpleasing to me. I would wish I could redraw it, but that's not an option. And so you sort of get used to that, and that becomes, that's the way you're going to do this.
That was my editorial style in my old magazine. No, seriously, if I had to write the From the Editor column, it's got to go out at 3:00.
But I guess,
on the page.
It's got to be understood. You have to make the narrative in the picture be understood. But anything more than that, sometimes, it's not available to you. And it's not like tremendous grace or flair comes naturally to me as far as visuals.
But do you prefer the narrower timeline? To keep you from being too neurotic if you have 2 weeks to think about something?
The other side of that story is that if I had 2 weeks to do something, I'd probably draw it a million times, and the first time would be the best, and I would, there's just no way around our limitations sometimes. I mean, I tried to contact my son's art teacher because I thought it would be good. There was a good article in the New Yorker by Atal Gawande, the doctor, about how it would be great to have a coach. Tennis players have coaches and concert pianists have coaches. And wouldn't it be great for a surgeon to have a coach, or other walks of life to have a coach? And I think a coach would be good for me at this point. So, I mean,
I shudder to ask because I've never done it and I have no idea if it would impinge on your art at all. You done therapy or not?
Not physical. Not physical. I've done some physical therapy, but, I do have a doctor right now that I'm seeing and who's got me on some stuff.
Yeah.
We could talk about him.
Okay. Is it something that's...
He's French.
Do you understand French?
Nope.
That makes it better. I think
he speaks English.
I was hoping for the non-talking cure. I thought that would be...
Is there one?
I wish. Then I wouldn't have to do the show anymore. Is the horror of the blank page an issue as far as that goes, or is it just screw it? I may as well start drawing now, and I'll figure out what comes out of it.
Well, the horror that's really not an issue for me. The horror of the blank page. Maybe it should be though.
I just want to give you something more to worry about. That's
yeah. I mean, often if an idea is needed, I'll fill sketchbooks with very thoughtless stuff, and I'm not worrying about it too much. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to look a certain way. So, and then with the final art, there's a certain amount of time, and it's got to be done. But there's obviously lots of other issues. I mean, one of the issues I talked about with my therapist recently was when the book came out, and the publishers, they're sending me blurbs of how they're going to sell the book, and one of them was, the best political...
preeminent illustrator of our time, that sort of...
Something like that. And it's just ridiculous, and it's, patently false, and the doctor said, this is advertising, and you can't worry about stuff like this. And so...
Did your folks praise your art?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that ties into it at all, if there was ever a sense of being self-deprecating about your work because of family response to it.
Well, yeah, there's other issues there. I mean, my father used to walk around talking about how great he was, so that really put me off of any having any amount of pride in anything you do. I found that sort of distasteful.
What field was he in?
I can't remember.
Okay.
He was a salesman for a while. Then he had some real estate stuff. He wrote a little bit. He wrote this hockey book. He had me help him try and get published about hockey families. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Just kind of weird.
Let's stay away from this.
Yeah, it could turn into a therapy session, but I don't think you want to go through that. So that's
I don't care. That might be preferable.
Along the same lines, then, influences. How did you? I know most of you guys start out drawing, and you're just the guys who never stop drawing when everybody else does.
Right.
But what were the drawing influences when you were coming up, and then as you started to mature?
That assumes a lot.
As you got older. It's better than mature. Sorry.
Mort Drucker. I mean, Mad Magazine. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm sure that lots of artists tell you that. And then when I got older and into art school, I discovered Alan Kober. I don't know if you know. You must know Alan E. Kober and Ed Sorel. And I think I sort of nestled somewhere in between Kober and Sorel. Mm-hmm. Those were big influences, as well as, I've been lucky enough to befriend a lot of artists whose work I love, like Chardello and Cuneo and
did you
Bauer and
have a freak out moment of meeting somebody whose work you idolized, like a Sorel?
Absolutely, yeah, Sorel. I had that moment where
holy shit, this is Ed Sorel and he's talking to me? Is that
Well,
or he's berating me?
Yeah, he's berated me, but this was when I handed in my first New Yorker cover, when I got the go-ahead to, and Francoise at the New Yorker encouraged me to send cover ideas, and I didn't ever think that was something they would tap me for, but I sent them ideas. As I said, I would walk around New York and make myself laugh. Mm-hmm. And I did one drawing of I think I had walked past a building in New York City with a lot of people smoking outside. That's when you had to go outside to smoke. When that started in the early 90s, I guess. And Francois said, I did a drawing of business people, office workers, standing out on window ledges on high buildings smoking. Combines the suicidal impulse of smoking, et cetera, et cetera. And she said to go ahead with it. And, of course, I freaked out and froze up and did several versions of it because it wasn't a timely cover. It didn't have to be done right away. And I brought her several, and they were very, very badly composed, and lots of nerves went into ruining them. And she said, you should talk to Ed Sorel. Ed would talk you through this. And I said, I'm not talking to Ed Sorel. I hear he's very hard to talk to, and I'm afraid of Ed Sorel, and that's not going to happen. And then, of course, she called him, and he called me, and he was delightful. And he said, come on down, I'll show you how to do it. And I went to his house for lunch on Varick Street in New York, and he said, show me what you've got. And I showed him the drawings I did. He said, no, these are terrible. No, what do you do? Where are you getting these buildings from? And I said, I just made them up. He said, no, don't ever do that. You can't do that. I can't do that. And he showed me how he would do it. He went and looked through these, I think they were Taschen books of photographs of New York. He said, okay, this is a good angle of a building for what you want. And then he started drawing it and showing me how he would do it. And I went home and, did several more. He eventually saw those when they were published, saw the one that they used, and, told me he didn't like it either. But it did become an actual cover. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Ed's terrifying. Yeah. And I went through something with him recently where I made the mistake, because I know he's Ed Sorel, and he's earned the right to be temperamental. And I asked him to write an essay for my book. I mean, I haven't done a book before, and the editors suggested we have several essays in the book. And I asked Ed to write one on the process of making illustration work. And he didn't want it. He agreed to do it initially, but then he had some thoughts about it, and he wanted to do more of an introduction, and the editor didn't want that. And then I got an email from Ed at 4 a.m. one day saying, it seems to me you want someone to write down your thoughts as opposed to someone to write an essay. So, surprise, I'm no longer interested in. And I went, and I wrote him back immediately and said, I did ask you at the beginning I was clear what the editor wanted, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked you, but we haven't really spoken since then.
No, I'll try and bridge you guys.
It's all right.
Everyone
I have a feeling we will be friendly again. I mean,
you're never too old to make long-term enemies, I find.
Is that right? Do you have enemies?
No. Well, probably. They're plotting behind my back, but that's the same as not knowing, I guess, is a paranoid.
I guess it's.
Do you crack yourself up with ideas?
I try to. I mean, that's the objective, is to make myself
laugh. Do you legit, like, that's actually really funny? Do you laugh at your...
I mean, sometimes. Yeah, usually it won't be a laugh out loud. If it's my own thing, I'll say, hey, that might be funny. Mm-hmm. Or,
do you have well, I'm thinking with Sam Gross is the biggest example of this, but he's on the cartooning and not the illustration
God
side.
Bless him.
Having a set day that he just lies down on the floor and thinks of his ideas, and another day that he begins all the drawings. Do you have work routines at all, or
not
is it pretty
really,
much things show up and holy crap, I got to do this?
I sleep badly, so I usually get out of bed around 10, and then anything can happen.
Yeah, but you weren't even awake when I showed up at noon today, so that was pretty
I was
impressive.
half awake.
And now completely asleep.
I'm fighting it.
We can get some coffee. You'll be.
Can I? I thought that once you sit down here, you can't get up from it.
Oh, we can ring in some coffee.
Do I have to take off the electrodes, though?
Yeah, no, just from the nipples. Please.
Okay.
Do you remember your first Mad magazine?
Yes, I absolutely do. My first Mad magazine, I remember my brother and I were standing at a bus stop with my mother, and there was some vague adolescent type guy reading a magazine, and it had Adam West and Burt Ward. It was Batman cover, and one of them was saying "ech." I think they were looking at Alfred E. Newman and saying "ech" or "blech" or something, and that just seemed like the craziest thing. And we said, "What is that?" to the guy, and he gave us the issue. That guy was like probably the most important person in my life, and that was the first issue that I remember. And do you remember that cover?
No, I'm going to go hunt it down after this. But just from the weird Mad fraternity, like I was at a Drew Friedman Society of Illustrators reception, and all the everyone who'd been published in Mad got together for a group picture at one point. Wow. There's still that sense of, even though it's decades and decades later and it's not what it once was,
I haven't seen it in a long time. I did do one thing for Mad. Maybe in the late 90s they asked me to do something, but I had to go in. So I went in, and there just seemed like a lot of maybe not totally clean, late middle-aged men in a room, and they wanted to go over everything first. And it seemed like the artist was just,
functional. Yeah,
it was just
So it wasn't a sense of, any sense of pride of, I finally got something in Mad magazine, or was it still
Oh, no, I was very excited that they called. And I mean, just like the book, I was excited that they asked me to do a book, but then the actual doing was disappointing. I think I did a lousy job. They certainly never asked me to do anything else. I mean, it wasn't really my thing to draw someone else's jokes and to just leave, word balloons for them. Yeah. And I had to draw Ted Koppel, which is no picnic. Just the whole thing was... I had forgotten about it.
What that would look like. Yeah, I sort of dredge up terrible memories for you.
Well, that was one, sort of.
Yeah, I work at it, Yeah, had you ever thought of...
Have you made anyone cry in any of these?
Yes,
Okay.
but he was a very emotional queer literature professor who I think was in the middle of a meth binge. When we
so am I.
So, yeah, and that's again, exactly where we are right now. Had you ever thought of doing comic strips, like panel-to-panel?
That's hard stuff. I really
That's I
admire.
wonder if it's... Because illustrators tend to
I did
early on realize it's
in
not their
Child magazine. I did 2 years of a cartoon of raising my son, which was kind of lousy, I think. I did but as far as a panel with a character, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I wonder, just like longer form, multi-page or multi-panel stuff instead of you know.
I did a spread of panels for the New Yorker during the election. But
those were more like single illustrations.
Yeah,
in a sense,
they were more
as opposed to a continuity. That's all I wonder if doing.
Yeah, that seems hard. I have a short attention span, and one off. I mean, I seem to have landed in the perfect milieu for myself, if I can say milieu.
You're French Canadian city you're from, so you should.
Right.
Be
it means butter tart in French. Do you know?
I had no idea, but that sounds good. So.
Yes.
Your milieu.
Milieu. I'm doing what I should be doing. I think, I can't do no more.
Well, I would. Nice, also with the Popeye reference. Some illustrators I've talked to say that they don't like the idea of drawing the same person again and again and again.
Yeah,
but
who said
course,
that? Cuneo?
Yeah. The downside is, of course, you can't say that because you've had to draw Trump.
Yeah.
So many times now.
Yeah, but creating a character and seeing him from every angle. I mean, I've done some kids' books.
The honor of my job is,
I have done some kids' books, and those sometimes involve, a certain kid seen from every angle and stuff. I had my son pose for Huck Finn when I did a kids' book about that. But yeah, it's not my strength.
Yeah, I remember when I met David Boswell, the guy who in the 80s did a comic book called Reed Fleming, World's Toughest Milkman. It's a great indie comic, Vancouver-based cartoonist. Very W.C. Fields inflected work, and V.T. Hamlin as far as the actual drawing style, the old alley-oop cartoonist. The problem was he gave the lead character a nose that was almost impossible to draw. And he said, if I could go back, Reed Fleming would not have a box on his nose. He would have some other feature that would be a little easier to draw. So I can imagine for you guys.
Understand
That's a major thing. So drawing Trump, which you've had to do an awful lot. Do you have since it's now, let's see, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump are the four presidents you've been drawing for the New Yorker. Favorite one to draw? Not favorite one that gives you the most material and gives you a job to keep drawing, but is there one you enjoyed drawing more than the others?
Enjoyed. I mean,
did you get joy from drawing, I guess, is the bigger question.
There's no joy in drawing Trump, but he is an amazing spectacle as far. I mean,
yeah, I just mean for the visual aspects.
Yeah, the visual aspects. He's amazing. Just to look at him talk, it's riveting. The way his mouth moves and stuff, and his gestures. He's plastique. I mean, there's something very interesting about him graphically. So it's definitely him. I mean, Clinton too. It seems like maybe that's what gets you elected president. Obviously it is. I mean, what you look like has got something to do with it. And you become like a cartoon character. And I mean, Popeye was a successful cartoon character because of the way he looked, and presidents are too, I think. Mm-hmm. And so Trump is definitely a cartoon character. But Obama too. I mean, you get to the point where you can draw them out of your head, and I can't say that for anyone else. But it seems like presidents are, they're graphic.
Now, you got in, we'll say, trouble / controversy with an Obama thing back in 2008.
Yeah.
Basically drawing that captured every stereotype about them that was being perpetuated by the right wing, which I'll talk about during the intro also, so I don't have to rehash it in front of you and give you PTSD or anything like that.
I don't even have to talk now. You could just encapsulate it all.
I don't want to say lesson learned, but were there aspects of it you'd have drawn differently looking back?
I mean, I wish it was a better drawing, but that's my only regret.
But
I mean,
the actual representation of what's, the way it was,
yeah,
I don't mean the content, but
it
just
was, it was an experiment. It was an attempt at something. I wish I stepped out on a ledge more and took more chances. Mm-hmm. And the New Yorker, God bless them, they ran it. Mm-hmm. And obviously it was, there were a lot of risks involved in it. But that is a certain joke setup of, I think of Randy Newman and the unreliable narrator just presenting something and saying, look how ridiculous this is, and making the viewer, fill in the context themselves. But all of that said, I don't consider that a particularly successful cartoon.
Hmm. That's what I wonder. Were there ways of drawing it that would have made it work better? You just can't look back in those terms?
You could. Yeah. I mean, God knows. But I think it was an experiment.
Mm-hmm. Now, can you talk a little about the relationship you have with editors, as opposed to art directors? Because it seems as though you're close with David Remnick at the New Yorker, in addition to the relationship with Françoise Mouly, who's the cover director and the art director. Similarly, I think when you were at Spy, you and Graydon Carter, had a certain...
Yeah, Graydon. I mean, Graydon's a Canadian. He lives down the street from here.
Oh, no shit. We'll stop in on him. I'll record.
He's not always up here. I mean, obviously, it's his...
I'll stalk. I'll camp.
Go ahead.
But can you talk a little about that? How having a good relationship with the actual editor of the magazine differs from the relationship with art directors and...
Well, I think I have a good relationship with an editor as long as I'm giving them work that they like. I deal with Françoise on everything. Sometimes I will get a note from David saying, this would be a good time to do something. He'll write to Françoise and me, but and I'm sure other artists are getting that note too. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that's relatively standard in terms, or do you just find, you have a certain rapport with these guys and what they're doing, editing an entire magazine?
I'm not sure I have a rapport with anyone.
No, certainly not me.
Certainly not. Indeed.
We'll just keep talking over each other, and it'll be.
It's exciting to get a note from the editor for after you've done something that worked out, or to.
Now, to go back to the Obama thing, he wasn't actually mad at the cover. And actually requested, well, at least long term, he wasn't mad at you as a human being.
This is complicated. So, yeah. Because my editor at the book we've been talking about thought, wouldn't it be great if we got Obama to write the intro to it? Yeah. Just write a little note. And so he encouraged me to I wrote a handwritten note to Barack Obama saying, I realize that we had our differences in the past, but let's put that behind us. I'm doing a book, and if you would like to say a few words about the work or about satire in general or anything you'd like. This was... I never heard back from him, obviously. I did a drawing at the top of the letter of him and Michelle rolling their eyes, looking at the fist bump cover, and it was silly to even have tried to do this.
But during the administration, though, he did ask for an original of one of your covers, right?
Right. Someone in the administration did. I don't know if it was him. It was sent to him, and I had to. Someone had me account for how much. Someone from the White House called and said, how much would that have been? Because they had to account for all the gifts.
There's no gift giving. I had to deal with this with FDA. They actually put out a federal guidance on what they're allowed to accept.
Well, this didn't cost very much. It was a print of a cover.
Did you inscribe it?
I did.
Did you inscribe something funny?
I think I did.
Sorry, I almost sank your election?
No, there was nothing like that. I think there was a drawing of him walking on water and then falling in, and I think I wrote "Stay Dry" or something like that. But I heard afterwards that Michelle Obama she made a speech, and then she wrote recently about moments that were difficult for her, and I think one of them was that cover. I don't think Michelle was crazy about that cover. Yeah, I'm sure neither of them were crazy about it, but so yeah, there'll be no hanging around with them, probably.
Did it cause you an issue when you were trying to become an American citizen?
No.
Okay, they didn't, void it at the top of the State Department and say, no, he does not get to become an American.
Yeah, that didn't happen. Maybe they were Trump people.
Yeah. What led to the decision to become an American?
What led to it? I mean, there were a number of things. One of them was Americanizing my wife. She's Canadian, and I got her green card. I had to become American first. As well, if I were to move back to Canada, and that's always tempting. If I only had a green card and I moved back to Canada for over a year, I would lose my green card status. I'd have to reapply. But now you're stuck with me.
Speaking of Canada, you got sued in Canada.
I did.
Yeah, you may as well tell the story because you'll.
Yeah, do you know who Conrad Black is?
Lord Black?
Lord Black, yeah. And Lord Tubby, they used to call him in one publication up there. But yeah, I was just asked to illustrate an article about Conrad Black in hell. And I drew him in a parade, with demons all around him. And he took great offense. And I was served with papers. When I lived in the Greenwich area, someone came to the door with legal papers, which the Toronto Life magazine, you think they would have let me know beforehand that we're going to be sued, but it was a total surprise and kind of shocking. I was being sued for $1 million by the guy. He didn't like being, he's litigious anyway, but he didn't like being depicted in hell. And he's a Catholic, he's got his right to that. But yeah, that didn't go anywhere, luckily.
I assume sleepless nights because that's what you have anyway. Anxiety about getting sued.
There was anxiety about that. I called the magazine and right away after the initial acid reflux, they told me that, don't worry about it. We'll take care of everything. And
he does this to everybody. It's okay. So,
right.
Like Drew Friedman getting sued by Joe Franklin for $40 million, which, that's $40 million is a lot bigger.
I know, but it's Joe Franklin. How do you take that seriously? Conrad Black he's an imposing figure, I think.
And again, it wasn't the illustration itself you were just doing on commission. It wasn't I've got an idea. I'm going to show Conrad Black in hell. Was that a...
Right. No, it was illustrating a story. I think a piece called Conrad Black in Hell.
Yeah. Did it sour you on going back to Canada at all?
God, no.
Or illustrating anything in Canadian magazines?
No,
Has that been
absolutely not. I think the libel laws are a lot weaker there. Free speech is a much bigger thing here, and satire and the pursuit of. But yeah, no, I didn't really internalize it much. I was nervous for a day or half a day.
Anything involving lawyers, I go through Kafkaesque paranoia.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Again, this idea that I have to testify in front of Congress at some point, I'm just convinced they'll be waiting afterwards to haul me away because I'll say something contradictory.
Have you been in a divorce? Have you ever been through that?
No, I've been a very lucky man all these years.
You'll love that.
So yeah, I'll work on avoiding that. But let me ask about satire. Do you have a gauge for punching down? Or is it pretty easy for you to tell a target is worth attacking? Or...
Yeah, I've talked to Steve Brodner about this before, and he, humanitarian that he is pretty, he makes a line at punching down and, won't, and is very aware of that. I don't really think that way. I think maybe my inclination is to punch at bullies, but I will go for cheap laughs, and in any direction it takes me. And one good thing about Françoise, among many good things about Françoise, is that she insists on seeing everything that I scribble in my sketchbook. Please don't self-edit is her credo. So I'll send her lots of very, very tasteless, punching as low as you can get, but I'm aware that that's not what anyone wants to see. But a good joke is a good joke, And
Sam Gross seems to live on that. He's had the I'll just keep making these terrible, terrible jokes and keep pushing. But I guess in terms of identifying what would be punching down, having this would be funny, but these guys actually don't deserve to have me lumping on them any further. Knowing when you're in that boat, I guess.
I can talk myself out of anything. And so I will fill sketchbooks with ideas, and initially they'll make me laugh, but then I'll think, maybe this is too whatever. And it would be my inclination not to send anything,
Would you make fun of Trump's kid?
Right.
Yeah,
right, exactly. Yesterday, Bannon was fired yesterday. And just seeing the name Bannon, I thought it would be funny if it said, Trump fires Barron or gets rid of Barron. But so there, I guess
again, an 11-year-old kid, you're like,
yeah, it would be funny, but I didn't even consider it, didn't even draw it.
Although, save that idea. That might be, a couple more months of this administration. You might.
Maybe when he's 18.
Yeah.
And Trump's in his 4th term.
Yeah. With our
or however long it'll take.
Melted Constitution. Yeah. So we were in Arthur Miller's old house.
We are in Arthur Miller's old house. Did you say were?
We are.
Okay.
I think we are still.
Yeah, we are.
Haunted? Do you feel any vibe from a...
I don't. I don't feel vibes at all.
Yeah. Do you have any sort of, I would say, collecting, fetishy type thing? Like, oh, this is a nib used by Al Cap to stab his wife or something?
Nope.
Okay.
No. There's a...
Collecting old books, that's a different thing, but,
Yeah, I'm not really a collector at all of anything. As far as we were cleaning out the garden shed, and by we, I mean my wife was cleaning out the garden shed, and she found in the foundation on the cement ground of it, Arthur Miller had carved his initials in it, A.M. Is that what it'd be? A.M. Yeah, from 1957, I think it was, and that was kind of cool, but that's as wild as the vibes have got.
Mm-hmm. And was that it wasn't a reason for buying this place in particular so much as a way for them to jack up the price on you?
No, actually we knew the lady who lived here. She's a filmmaker. She moved to Charlottesville. I wonder how she's doing. She moved there to be with her daughter. She's a filmmaker, Joyce Chopra, or she might go by the name of Joyce Cole. But yeah, we've been in here for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. We lived in Walter Matthau's place down the road. We rented that for 3 years. I know, Walter Matthau's like a punchline, his name.
Yeah, but still, you watch Bad News Bears and you realize, man, there was some dark shit for kids back in the 70s.
I never saw Bad News Bears. I don't think of that. I think of Walter Matthau as Odd Couple.
But trust me, watch him as an alcoholic, shitty, terrible guy running a Little League baseball team, and you'll have wow, how did these kids end up becoming adults? And that's why Jackie Earl Haley ends up, quite as bent as he is. This is all just 70s
looking forward to
references.
It. Okay.
So, as the face of the New Yorker, which we'll give you, do you have any concern of, I'll say overexposure in terms of the, I know the flip side is I'm glad they want my covers, but.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. There's been some months where I've done 2 or 3 covers, and it's pretty terrifying.
There's just coincidentally on my my coffee table at home, I had a couple issues from this summer, not consecutive ones there. And when I was telling my wife I'll be recording with Barry Blitt, and she said, "Who? I don't know who that." And I held up basically 3 issues that were there, and that guy, Yeah.
Yeah, that's. But it's not a problem you can talk to people about. It's.
The New Yorker wants too much of my artwork. Exactly. So he's like a real dick at that point, but
Right. This week there was a wonderful cover by David Plunkett of
the
Trump
Klan sale.
And I pitched stuff for that, but I was a little bit relieved that they used it. It's a great cover to start with, but that someone else did it. I just did one a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. I love doing covers for them, but you can get tired of anything.
Mm-hmm. Are there directions your art style or the medium you've worked in has changed over the years?
There ought to have been more. That would be another reason to get a coach. I should be trying.
This I've wondered if there's been just different forms or different, beyond pen and ink things that you do.
Not really.
Sorry.
I used to do some collage stuff where I would cut out. It was still graphic representation, narrative stuff, but I would cut out the figure of the face and paint on colored paper, and that was nice. But there's not time to do that for short deadlines.
That's what I was going to ask. The incentives I don't mean to treat your art as though it's just a commodity, but
it
the
is just a
incentive
commodity.
Well, in
and
some
soon I'll be out of work, and I'll try all kinds of new things. And
alcoholism, and I'm just
no,
kidding.
yeah.
But there's that idea though that this is the sort of work that's in demand. I just had wondered, again, if you are able to look at, this is what I'm doing, but what I'd like to be able to draw.
I would like to direct is what I'd like to do.
Yeah. Speaking of, John Cuneo was wondering about the collection of your work. Should fans buy the book or should they wait for the movie? And
that's a very funny question.
Also, is it true that the movie you're going to be played by Bob Balaban? That's his other question.
John asked you that?
Yes.
Yeah,
he asked me to ask that.
When I lived in New York, like cab drivers, an upholsterer I once had said, who you look like is Bob Balaban. So I've got a lot of that. I think Tim Robbins bought a drawing I did, and he gave it to Bob Balaban. And that's really
the closest 6 degrees of separation.
Exactly.
But yes, Cuneo does in fact think, we'll wait for the movie, I guess.
Yeah, there won't be a movie. There'll barely be a book.
I think it's a wonderful. I'm so glad I got to see it already because I think your work is fantastic. You self-deprecate as illustrators tend to do. Drew Friedman also asked me to ask, good Peter Kaplan stories.
Peter Kaplan
from The Observer.
Yeah, Peter Kaplan was a wonderful person who left us too quickly, as they say. He was a real mensch and a real illustrator's editor. And the first time I met him, I thought he was a bozo, He was just so enthusiastic that I thought there can't be any internal life in here. And it turns out he's a, incredibly bright and thoughtful person and a Rhodes Scholar. And a couple of times leaving Manhattan, I happened to be on trains with him. I happened to get on a Metro North train, and he was on the same train, and we had great conversations. There were a number of times where he asked me to do last-minute drawings for him, and he would always promise me he'd buy me a Discman. The first time I saw him, he said he would buy me a Walkman. Then a few years later, it was a Discman, which he never fulfilled his end of the bargain. I did him his drawing. He had me do a drawing of his daughter once to put on a T-shirt for her birthday, and I think she was very insulted by the drawing. It's hard to draw a 13-year-old girl. So that
tastefully, yeah.
Tastefully. I'm sure Cuneo would handle it well.
Yeah. So your history with The Observer also doesn't go into the Kushner era?
I met Jared there a couple of times. Just towards the end of Peter's reign, I think I went in to do some drawing. I did little small, they were sort of a riff on the Wall Street Journal little...
The head cuts sort of things.
But these were a little bigger and obviously not as tight as those drawings. And I did them for quite a few years, maybe close to 20 years. First with Graydon Carter when he was at the...
Oh, yeah.
He was at The Observer for a while before he went to Vanity Fair. I guess he brought me over from Spy. And then Peter came in. And it was great to know Peter.
Do you have a Kushner story? Only because Friedman published his Meeting Jared Kushner story that had the great moment of... I'm sorry, but there are many more important people I need to talk to you besides you, and just walked away from it.
Yeah, I didn't actually exchange words with Jared. I think he said hi or something. But even that I could tell.
Yeah, you feel some connection to this whole thing. So, do you do any advertising work, by the way, or has it all been editorial pretty much?
I'm doing an ad job now, and I don't do much. I got out of art school, and my instinct was to go to London because there was a lot of great illustration work coming out of London in the late 80s. Mm-hmm. Actually, this was the early 80s. Geez. So I went and lived in London for a year, and I ended up getting a job in an ad agency. I wasn't finding any luck selling illustration, but I worked in an ad agency and was a visualizer. And I would do drawings of storyboards of vegetables, and they'd tell me to make the lettuce look crispier. It wasn't for me. But so advertising, it's not really my thing.
I was wondering. It sounds a little bit similar to the Mad Magazine thing,
right? Just
in terms of you're just a pair of hands.
I have a very narrow scope of what I can do. Mm-hmm. It's real, and it's getting narrower as the afternoon progresses.
I will let you get back to it.
No, I don't mean that. I just mean,
yeah, but
the world's closing in on me. And you too, probably.
Yeah, I find myself growing more boring every minute of the day, but I think that's part of not drinking anymore. So, I'm kidding.
Well, we have booze here.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. I could do that.
We got uppers, we got downers. You want guns? I got guns.
This is perfect. And Connecticut, of all places. I mean, I haven't told anybody where you live. That's keyboard and piano. Your peers in illustration say you're an amazing player.
Really?
Yes.
I'm not an amazing player.
Well, by their standards, you are.
Yeah, by their standards.
You know, because
they're tone deaf. No, I'm a lousy piano player, but just good enough to be lousy. So I play with other people. It's real fun. Yeah. And it's an antidote for drawing where you put a line down and it's there on the page, you know.
This way it just drifts away and
it's temporal or whatever, but you make a mistake and it's behind you in a second. If your next phrase is nice, then that's what's happening now. What a bunch of crap I'm talking. But it's so much fun to play. I guess because it's not professional and it's a hobby.
Does music either play into your drawing practice in terms of having music going, or does any aspect of the practice of music overlap with what you draw or how you draw?
I know that I can no longer listen to music while I work because it makes me want to go play along with it.
Interesting.
So that's difficult. And I can't listen to talking if I'm thinking of ideas. I can listen to talk radio or podcasts if I'm inking something, if I'm doing a final artwork. But thinking of ideas. So usually I keep things quiet. I mean, I'll drive up to Canada and I will have nothing on the radio the whole time. I'm sort of a quiet freak.
Yeah, it's kind of serial killer sounding.
I guess, but one look at me and you don't have to worry about that.
Barry Blitt, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's over? Whew.
And that was Barry Blitt. His new book, Blitt, is out this week, and it's just a wonderful collection of decades of his illustrations, along with those really nice appreciations by a couple of his pals, not Ed Sorel. You can find it in bookstores everywhere, and you can find more of Barry's work in The New Yorker, of course, as well as his website, barryblitt.com. And that's BarryBlitt. He is, smartly, not on Facebook or Twitter, near as I can tell. Now, I recorded the conversation with Barry at his home in Connecticut. There were a couple of minor tolls, but this one really just cost gas money, time, and a great strawberry rhubarb pie from Auntie Elle's Bakery in Tuxedo, New York. I decided to surprise him and Angie with that. So if you want to help defray some of the costs of the Virtual Memories show, like web hosting, travel, equipment, and pie, or if you just want to toss me some money because you think the show is worth it, then visit patreon.com/VMSpod or paypal.me/VMSpod and make a one-time or recurring donation. A special thanks go out to Kevin Katila, John Wendler, Fred Kish, Jonathan Kranz, Stephen Nadler, Wallace Wilde Minozzi, Andrew Mason, Greg Tanner, Garrett Zecker, Craig P. Steffen, Jack Les Camella, and Ron Slate for going over and above in their support of the Virtual Memories show. We have the full list of show supporters at chimeraobscura.com/VM. Now, our music for this episode is Nothing's Gonna Bring Me Down by David Bayerwald, used with permission from the artist. Oh, I should say, when we finished up, Barry walked over to his keyboard, which is in the studio, and played the opening notes of this song. So he's listened to the podcast a bunch of times and knew what he was in for, but still managed to try to submarine me the entire way through. Anyway, that's it for this week's Virtual Memories show. Go buy a copy of Blitt. It is a phenomenal collection, and Barry is an amazing and legendary cartoonist, or illustrator, sorry. Anyway, thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week with a massive, meandering conversation with advertising legend George Lois. It is one not to be missed. Till next time, you can subscribe to the Virtual Memories show and download past episodes at the iTunes Store or at soundcloud.com/VMSpod. You can also find all our episodes and get on our email list at either of our websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. You can also follow the Virtual Memories show on Twitter and Instagram at VMSpod, on Facebook at facebook.com/virtualmemoriesshow, at virtualmemoriespodcast.tumblr.com, and on YouTube by searching for The Virtual Memories Show. And if you like this podcast, please go to iTunes, look it up, leave a rating and review for us. That'll help us build a bigger audience. Till next time, you've been listening to The Virtual Memories Show. I'm your host, Gil Roth, and you are awesome. Keep it that way.